We turn to the politics of war with our political panel. John McCarthy, Democratic strategist, principal at Causeway Strategy Group. And Jeff Burton is with us, the Republican strategist, co-founding partner at Maven Advocacy. John and Jeff, thank you so much. Jeff, I'll start with you. On the word quagmire that keeps coming up here, the Washington Post fronted its coverage with that word in the headline today. Jake Sullivan was talking about it, using that term as a point of fact. Is that what this is?
I don't think it is. I think we have to be, a quagmire is a lot longer than what we've been dealing with, which is just over 6 months. I think part of it is at the onset, the Trump administration could have done a better job for sure, messaging why we were going to war in Iran, why the conflict was happening, and that it may be more than two weeks to a month. And I think expectations game really is hurting the messaging and hurting the Republicans here. But I would absolutely not call it a quagmire. We've been, Iran has been a state sponsor of terrorism for more than 40 years, and every president has just played around. And you look at what they're doing now with giving drones to Russia against Ukraine, what they've done in Yemen, Oman, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda. There's a long history of Iran opposing the U.S. and being an active partner in terrorism. And that's going to take a little bit longer to get rid of and make sure that we're safe.
Well, your point, Jeff, is well taken that this has only been about a 6-month conflict. But, John, I guess I wonder if a quagmire is so much about looking backward about the amount of time that has passed already, or looking forward to no real end date in sight, the suggestion that this could go on for an indefinite period of time. Is that not what the 80% of Americans were suggesting in that Reuters Ipsos poll?
Well, I think that quagmire could kind of be applied to the entire problem that we have right now with the Trump presidency. First off, great interview. And one of the things that I really took away from it was almost just the sense of temperament that came from Jake. I worked with Jake, think he's a brilliant mind. But one of the things, just the calmness and steadiness of that interview, I think is such a contrast to what we see now. And I think one of the undercurrents about all the polls that you just shared, both in terms of support for the conflict and the president's approval rating overall, is that there's an overstimulation from the presidency. Most Americans don't want to sit and think about the president every single moment of the day. Donald Trump was elected to lower costs. He was elected to say that he would, never start a new forever war. And he's basically not focused on the first and dove right into the second. So that's not going to go over well with voters as we look towards the midterms. But I do think that the undercurrent going underneath all of this is that whether it's the conflict here, whether it's the conflict with the economy, the on and off again tariffs, this overstimulation and chaos benefits no one in his political party and is why his numbers are so low.
Well, now that we're in months beyond weeks, there is a question about Congress's role in all of this. Lawmakers are on recess until after Labor Day. Jeff, Senator Tim Kaine saying just yesterday, in the last 24 hours, that he will file yet another war powers resolution when they return, but in this case to block the president from targeting Oman, which he threatened to do yesterday, to bomb Oman if it gets in the way of negotiations or the blockade. He told Fox he would bomb the S out of them. I'm just curious, once we get beyond primary season, and we're just about there with the contests that are taking place today, will there be more emphasis on having a say in war powers and an authorization of the use of military force from Republican lawmakers?
I don't think that it'll really have anything to do with what happens in Congress. I think it'll be related to the messaging. Republicans need a better message on Iran. It's definitely hurting them with the voters right now, and being able to be on message and have more focus, like John said, I think that is somewhat hurting Republicans right now. I'm not real worried. They voted on any war powers resolution that's been voted on almost every week in the Senate over the last 2-3 months, and with very limited movement on that. So I wouldn't expect too much interest of that. It'll be voted on in September, but I don't think it'll really affect voters that much or pick up many Republicans.
Well, so it raises the question, John, of if there is a better way for Democrats to counter and show that they're opposed to the conflict and its ongoing nature. Do war powers votes really even get any oxygen? Does the everyday voter pay attention to that?
Voters aren't blind. And the Republicans in Congress, especially in the House of Representatives, have basically handed the president a blank check since the start of this administration. Congress, the Article 1 branch of the Constitution, a co-equal branch of government, has certainly not behaved as such. There have been a few exceptions kind of in recent 2 months or so, where maybe some senators have stepped forward to try and put the kibosh on some of President Trump's more extreme ideas like slush funds for January 6 participants. But by and large, the American people have looked at their members of Congress and said, you're not advocating for me, you're just cozying up and siding up with the president. The title of the job is representative. People go to Washington in order to serve the people that they're elected by. And I think that, those members of Congress, like in swing districts who are Republicans, that are looking at, gas prices up, grocery prices up, the spike in healthcare premiums, that's very hard to explain to your constituents back home, other than just sitting and saying, Donald Trump wanted me to do it. And that's not going to be something that they're rewarded for come November.
$4.06 is the national average today. Jeff, $4.06 is the national average today. Does that number need to come down for Republicans to maintain majorities?
Absolutely. The economy is judged on the street corner, and that's gas prices. And you saw about a month ago, before the Iran war kicked up again, gas prices were coming down 75 cents to $1, and it simultaneously happened with Republicans and Donald Trump's poll numbers going up. That's going to happen, and if it needs to happen for Republicans to be able to do well and have a chance at keeping the House and their majority in the Senate, for sure. And I just like to mention again on the House and Senate floor, going back to the last point, that John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, was in Congress for almost 30 years. He said it best, that only 2 times in his whole entire terms did the House floor ever really make it into the public mind. It's more about the overall what's happening than one thing, and that's why I don't think the War Powers vote really makes much difference, because there's so much information for voters to take in that what happens with one vote is has very limited impact.
Well, when we consider the way in which voters are thinking about this conflict, yes, how it's impacting them economically with prices at the pump is one consideration, but we've also seen it create even more blowback against Israel, John, and the Netanyahu government. We could see that on display in the primaries today in Florida with a few Democrats who are vying to stay in Congress. How complicated is that issue for your party?
It's something that Democrats are going to have to deal with. Some of these things are conversations that I think are best had in the majority. I don't think that writ large, this is something on the mind of every single Democratic voter. People have to run in races that are local to them. So if this is something that's relevant for their community, I think it's a worthwhile conversation to be had amongst their community about who they want to send to the Congress. But at the same time, you have Donald Trump saying things like, Americans are going to pay a teeny bit more so that a very bad country couldn't have a weapon. I think that American people are incredibly patriotic, and Americans are willing to shoulder that burden, but it's on the president to be able to explain to them what the off-ramp for all of this is. So the conflict in the Middle East, spurring this affordability crisis, is going to fundamentally be the issue that this election is about. People want to know what he's going to do to bring down their cost of living. That's what it's going to be about.
All right, John McCarthy and Jeff Burton, our political panel today. Thank you so much. And we'll have more ahead on the